My name's Pooh Sprague, a highly diversified horticultural enterprise, family owned and operated on Plainfield, New Hampshire on the Connecticut River.
This episode is a bit of a ramble, as a 50-year career in farming would be expected to be. That being said, in this episode, Pooh shares how he got started in the early 70s, selling bedding plants, the challenges of labor, growing almost 100 acres with over 30 high tunnels, and hiring 7 H2A workers, tracking water usage, the FSMA produce safety rule, climate change, resilience, soil stewardship, farm transitioning, knowing your markets, not being organic, strawberries, no-till, and cover crops. This episode is full of stories and information. I hope you enjoy it. Before we get started, I wanted to share a review left on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for sharing the stories of farmers of all sizes. Thank you to Marigold's Person for rating and reviewing this show. If this show has impacted you, I'd love to hear it via email or publicly as a review in the podcast app. The Farmer's Share is supported by the Vermont Vegetable and Berry Growers Association and the Ag Engineering Program of the University of Vermont Extension. If you enjoy this show and want to help support its programming, you can make a one-time or reoccurring donation on our website by visiting thefarmershare.com/support. Now, let's get to the show. I wanted to meet with you because you're a longtime grower in the state of Vermont.
Old guy.
You're known around here.
Old guy.
And I like to capture some of the stories that you've got to share and how you've turned a lifestyle and a business in agriculture.
Okay, my name's Pooh Sprague. I'm at Edgewater Farm in Plainfield, New Hampshire, and I'm the de facto ancient titular head of the farm, but by no means the farm itself. I've been involved in farming for 51 years on the river, Connecticut River in Plainfield here. Currently it's a family farm. My daughter works in the greenhouse area. My son is basically the manager of the farm. My wife is the bookkeeper, and I'm the gopher and the idiot they send off to do things. But anyway, both Ann and I, my wife Ann and I, grew up on dairy farms in New Hampshire. She about a mile down the road at McNamara Dairy. And I grew up on a hill farm in Hillsborough and picked stones and stuff. I was out of the dairy farming business for several years. When I was in school, I contemplated a career in turf management, music, and a few other things. And I ended up back here in 73. We got married in 73, and we started growing vegetables. We really had no idea what we were getting into, and we really didn't have any training. At the University of Hampshire, I had a degree in Bachelor of Science in environmental conservation. My wife had a degree in psychology and elementary education. Probably the best business decision we ever made in regards to what we're doing today was to not get back in the dairy farm business at the time. She knew how to milk cows. I knew how to spread shit and bale hay, but I didn't know how to fix the baler, and we didn't know enough about herd health. We knew we were in over our heads, and it didn't look like we were going to be able to get back into it with a capital expense. So my father-in-law lent us a little ground. We started growing vegetables and trying to sell them at the little general stores and things, and that was 1973. Did that the year 73, 74. At the end of 74, the guy who owned this farm, his name was Stan Colby, and Stan Colby had been one of the first extension agents back in the day. They were not only held to within their boundaries, but Stan was an extension county agent for Sullivan County, New Hampshire, and Windsor County, Vermont. And he saw us plugging away down there, and he had this family farm, and he approached us about buying, and we did. So that's fall of 1974. It'll be 50 years in November that we've actually been on the site. The original farm was pretty small, 29 acres, tillable plus or minus. And, we just kind of muddled through. The early years were, mostly failures. I mean, we didn't know marketing. We had no background of that. The only preparation we had was, what we had in our youth in terms of field work and things like that, seeing plowing, harrowing, understanding the first the three letters on a fertilizer bag. That knowledge was pretty shallow. But we landed in an area on Connecticut River soils, which are pretty much a lucky break at the time because they're stone-free. And we also landed at the time in an area that was with Dartmouth College and Dartmouth Hitchcock Hospital. There was some market development and a beginning interest in locally, grown things. The third component that really kind of worked to our advantage was when Stanley Colby sold the farm and he retired, the new county agent was a guy named Bill Lord. And Bill Lord probably is a somewhat familiar name, at least to some of the older farmers, as New Hampshire's New Hampshire small fruit specialist. And he saw us as pretty malleable, and he got us to growing strawberries. So our first real crop that generated any income was pick your own strawberries, and that was 1976. I'd always had an interest in greenhouse growing, although I never had any real experience in it. And by 1979, we ventured into bedding plants, and that's why most of this greenhouses all these greenhouses down here are dedicated to ornamentals and things. And that really was of interest to both myself and my wife. We had our first child, Sarah, in 1981, and that was Ann had been a teacher all those years. That was kind of the breaking point. So we kind of had to, now we were sort of out there farming, and we had to kind of had to get serious about it in a big way. I had worked, I was still working part-time jobs for, shoveling trap rock for a local contractor and septic fields and driving dump truck, bush hogging and stuff. And in the winter, I worked 13 or 14 years down in Mount Scottney here in mid-Vermont as a ski patroller during the week. So there was plenty of time to read up, listen to, read up all the extension stuff and do my seed orders at the top of the mountain on somebody else's time when the skiing was bad. So we had some good opportunities. But we really saw right off that there was no future in wholesale on small scale. So we by 1981, we sort of started to know some of the extra guys. So we had not only extension, but we had other guys doing the same thing. And all of a sudden we were communicating pretty freely. Bob Gray up at Four Corners Farm, he was doing the same thing. As a matter of fact, he bought a farm at one point they bought that farm. We were looking at buying it in 1981. We met Jake Guest, Dave Pearson, some of these guys, and we said, boy, how do you do this? And they said, well, this is how we approach it. And, we share a lot of sharing of information. And, we quickly realized that we weren't each other's competitors, that we were, there's plenty of market for everyone, plenty of room for everybody. And so, at that time, Cedar Circle Farm started up with Bob and Marilyn Stone. We became good friends with them. Some trading of product, and we had a guy down in Grantham, Roshatana Sugar Springs Farm, and he really mentored me on retail. And we put up we sold out of the barn for years, but by 1983 we realized that a presence on Route 12A up there would make a big difference. So this is all part of expansion and growing. Found the bedding plant business was good demand for that, and it dovetailed well with the strawberry thing. So first we're doing strawberries, next we're doing strawberries and as an adjunct in this bed of asparagus that morphed into adding a couple acres of sweet corn, some tomatoes, and we just kept, we added a couple kids, some land, and, presto, 50 years forward, we're today, where, we got about 100 acres tillable, and we're cropping probably 70, 75 of that, rest in cover crops. Not all that land is highly productive, but markets are good, and Ray has been able to develop a whole wholesale enterprise that I was not able to, and he's very comfortable in that role. And he's also very comfortable in managing a lot of people. I don't know if he's comfortable. I know it drives him nuts. But I know my capabilities were, people that I could keep within my sight. It's like a few more people working in the fields on singular tasks. Now he's got he's got 8 people he's responsible for, essentially, not including myself or two other guys I work with, just to do the field stuff. And that's a juggle and a bit of a nightmare, but he's capable of it. He manages to make it happen. So it's a different animal now, for sure. As I say, a greater percentage of what we do is wholesaling vegetables and small fruit. A lot of that has to do with the development of our relationship with the Hanover Consumer Co-op. And every time I say that, other farmers start drooling out the side of their mouth. Oh, yeah, those guys. Oh, my God, what a great thing. And they have been good. There's been great relationship, and we work hard to maintain its health and viability by, doing all the right things and being cooperative when we need to. And, not if somebody has to make a trip for a small amount on a Sunday, Ray makes it happen because it is that good of a count. So that's helped. And then other things have come along on the side. So at this point, that's where we are. I am not sort of involved in the long-term planning. And I'm not sure the long-term planning always, we did holistic farm management. We try to do some things. We pick up parts, but the 5-year plan lasts about 6 months up here. And I think it's even more challenging now, especially, I think one of your questions, not to get ahead, but 10-year outlook. I mean, 10-year outlook for anybody in this business is going to be extremely challenging. And what weather drives that. I mean, I think demand for product is good, but I think a lot of that's got to do is it's going to be harder for the Sun Belt to feed everybody. So I think the real challenge for us going forward is to be able to produce stuff, and given climate change. And Michael Smith once said to me, farmers are resilient and they're very bright, and they can farm in swamps and they can farm on deserts. The problem is we never know what it's going to be, whether it's a desert and that's, I think, the last couple of years back to back have been, the exact indication of that. 2 years ago, in 2022, we had a potato crop on a well-drained soil, and we didn't have irrigation. It was a bit of a gamble, but we took it in the shorts and ended up with 25% of the crop. This year we were on well-drained soil down here, and we had cannons and everything ready to go when the tuber size started to size up the tubers and things, and you know how that worked. We didn't run a pump or irrigate a drop of water. And we had a bumper crop because we had more water than we could possibly use. Trying to figure out what it's going to be and where to place your crops. It drives the challenge of soil stewardship. I just went down the other day after heavy rain, and I got less than a 3% slope, and you can see, the deer have cropped all the rye off, and there's a little erosion out there, and so there's just so many challenges out there. It's really hard to say what I'm going to do. There's always the market thing. All of a sudden we have alternarian broccoli, and it's harder to raise broccoli. So that wasn't always the case. It used to be in the 70s and 80s and 90s, it was a trash crop. It sold a lot of it till George Bush said he didn't like broccoli or some damn thing. It was a kind of nonsense. Fluctuations and whoever thought I can remember the first time I put cilantro in. I was going like, nobody's going to buy this shit. Smell it, arugula. We used to put in those mixes from Johnny's, and, we got on the pick list. It became, who's going to pick the fruity pebbles, which was usually a mixture of red lettuce and green lettuce or whatever. How many bunches of fruity pebbles does it stand? And then, one of my guys says, I really rather not pick the arugula. It stinks. that kind of thing. So, and now look at it, it's all about these weird little greens and Asian greens and things you never heard of. Bok choy, pak choy, tat soy. Those things didn't exist. I'm so old. They didn't exist in any catalog in America in the 80s. How'd you get started farming? Well, I mean, as I sort of mentioned, I was playing music quite a bit in college, and I had a year of music school until they told me I was going to have to play tuba in a marching band. That was my exit strategy right there. I went right to the College of Agriculture. I filled around with ag journalism and a couple other things, and I took I did the earth-shattering thing when I told them I really wanted to go down to 2-year school and take some greenhouse courses. It looked like I was a two-headed monster. But, I was thinking about things that I might want to do that really, after we got rid of the cows, and my family got rid of the cows, I had a year or two I worked out, and I realized that I just, I love music, but I just was never going to be nocturnal. I just never, much as I still do it, I can remember coming home from Jay Peak one night, and the horizon was getting light. It really just felt wrong. And I never did. I played 27 nights in a row one time in Concord. Even so, it was kind of during the winter, and I, get up at 11 in the morning, go over to rehearsal at 2, and that's your breakfast. Rehearse for 4 hours.
Throws your clock off.
You go have your lunch, and you come back and play 4 hours, and then you have dinner. It's like, it didn't really feel right. So I was really looking for an opportunity to try to really, even if I did something, if I ended up in some sort of traveling lounge act or whatever. Eventually, I wanted to get farming, and then, sort of with the encouragement of Ann's encouragement and her father saying, "I got some land you can try this on." He said, "Well, why not now?" And so that was the beginning of all of it. Kind of, I think, last man standing. I think everybody sort of starts out, now there's a CSA model, which works for a lot of people to sort of get their feet, and they say this is, they try it, they get rid of some stuff, and they got some money coming in, and they can say, well, this is okay, but this isn't, we got to get more serious about it, and this looks like maybe we could do this, and they add and they subtract. And we did the same thing. Strawberries were good, but, I think I always say that for us it was the Datsun truck. We have a child coming, in the Datsun truck you can put your foot through in several places, spit through the floorboards. That's fine when you're 26 or 28. You're driving over to the ski area in a 1964 4-cylinder Willys, Jeep.
You're just making it happen, yeah.
Right, it's okay, you're young, and that's what it's about. But eventually you sort of see, wow, we gotta kind of, ramp it up here if we're gonna hope to send anybody to school, or or even pay the T-ball fine, So yeah, so that's how that. Now I am rambling. Where am I going here?
Sounds like the kids were a motivation for you to really step it up, so you could provide for somebody else other than yourself.
I mean, we had the ornamental thing going. We had the income coming in, and it was good. But it was tough to I think Ann wanted to be here, but it was tough to sort of say, okay, your free dental plan, which you did have back in those days as the teachers did and the families had, all this insurance and stuff is going away, and this is a big expense, and it wasn't just a loss of income. I wasn't making much money being a weekend warrior. I was just playing to, make myself whole or whatever. So yeah, we had to say we got to kind of make this. How do we do that? And it's like, well, looks like we can sell this stuff, and we just get this big. The truth to be known. I think that Edgewater Farm developed first as a pick your own place, but boy, our serious growth spurt happened, in the late 80s and 90s with the ornamentals. There were times when, we had the discussion about not growing vegetables, not running a farm stand, just doing. You've interviewed Jack, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jack always starts this thing. He says, you know, always puts up pictures of new tractors and toys. And he said, we had a very good year in the greenhouse. And there is an element of truth to that. I mean, you could, in the 80s and 90s, if you were a reasonably good grower, you could do no wrong. I mean, you could, you know, if you had, you'd have the main season, but, you know, you'd find yourself the 1st of July with 4 packs of salvia that had 2 missing, you know. So you put that in a 4-inch pot and you keep selling. You keep selling bedding plants to Labor Day, and then you got into mums. Man, it's just like, this is easy, you know. Look how smart we are. But then, you know, even with Martha Stewart, people all of a sudden outgrew. Everybody loved their annual garden, and they switched to perennials because it's kind of hard work weeding up, you know, it's as much work as a vegetable garden. I guess I'll get perennials, and all of a sudden the perennial thing kind of hit because it's just enough work. Maybe I don't want to weed the perennial, but I'll get some bushes. So all of a sudden, you know, everybody who was selling bedding plants, that shrunk up pretty hard. And, you know, growth in the greenhouse area, we still experience it, but it's single digit or low double digits still. But we love doing it, and it's identity what we do, and you know, I mean, it dovetails with everything else. I mean, for everybody, labor is the problem. I think everybody I talk to with labor is a problem. I'd never thought we'd have 7, you know, H2A workers here. You know, that was Shelburne Orchards. That wasn't Edgewater Farm, you know. And when we were thinking of putting blueberries in years and years ago, I had a couple of young bucks, and they were always sort of like digging at me, you know. I said, well, you know, if we had blueberries, we'd be making all kinds of money. You know, I said, if we had blueberries, you know, this kind of predicated everything. And I said, we went to a New England conference. I want you guys to go to every goddamn blueberry meeting. I said, and if you can come back, tell me that's still the thing to do, like you dream it. I said, I'll write the check for it. We'll do it. Let's do it, you know. And they went to the meetings, and after the first day, at the end of the first day, they said, it's off the table. And I said, well, geez, that didn't take long. What happened? And they said, it's pretty clear that it's going to be labor intensive. And, you know, we're struggling to get our berries out of the field, you know, trying to take care of a couple of wholesale accounts because high school kids just aren't there anymore. They're not there in numbers, and and when they are there, they're not there, you know. So, I mean, things just changed. So anyway, labor, how'd I go down that road?
Berries, blueberries.
Yeah. So, I mean, eventually, once we saw our way to having, you know, H2A labor, we got into the blueberry thing. And, you know, it's really opened up. And we keep adding guys. And, we've got property that's housing, you know. Mm-hmm. That's really kind of the transition when Ray came back from college. You know, everything that Ann and I and Mike had done up to that point had kind of, and Sarah too. I mean, but Sarah's arena was really the greenhouse that she really liked. But everything that we'd done, the groundwork was there. That was home base. That was comfort. This is much we can handle. And he was sort of like the next guy with, you know, the cojones to say, I think we can do this.
Some fresh energy.
You know, and we're just kind of like, I'm getting tired. You sure you want to do that? You know, and he has, he's taken it to a much bigger level than you know. I mean, I think there's your question down there. You know, did you imagine? No. You know, I didn't imagine any kids would come back here. I can remember my father came to me and said, when we were growing up, I always had been at the ass end of a Holstein all my life. And when he said, you know, it's not happening anymore, I was like, hot damn, you know. I'm gonna be rubbing elbows with Carl Yastrzemski, and you know, I'm gonna be a Red Sox guy, and I'm gonna be playing for the Birds. I get my life's all ahead of me. Looks good. And then you find out after a while that it's not what you imagine. You know, you miss the outdoor component and the variability. I'm attention deficit, as you can tell from this interview. But you know, this is perfect. It's a perfect job for a guy, because you're never really taxed with anything so long. Even when you're like hand pulling carrots or onions. I mean, I like the onions. The onions are a drag because you pull them, you bring them home, they got to go dry, and we don't have a good system yet. And it's a lot of work, and it's miserable, and it's hot, and it has to be done at the tail end of the day with and various things. But there's an end to it. I say, how you guys coming? And Roy will say, well, Pooh, 40% through the field, we're coming now. It's like, and then you're on to potatoes, and then you're on to squash or pumpkins. There's always the next thing. So I think, that always kind of like, oh, I'm glad strawberries are over. They're getting pretty small. I'm glad blueberries are all. So, that interests a lot of people. And, I mean, there's some great benefits from being highly diversified, and it's a real pain in the ass to be highly diversified.
Right.
And that's always sort of brings us back to the question about growing in controlled environments, the greenhouse ornamentals. We know they're going to come. The greenhouse people are pretty much the easiest, least entitled of the people that retail people. And we are retail. There's no question about that. We are.
How big's your crew now?
The year-round crew is really some retail. And it's not really. There's nobody doing 40 hours a week for the next month. Mm-hmm. This is Ray just finished up packing potatoes and carrots, and we use that barn not only as a pack out barn, also use as a potting shed because it's a trophy. You can keep the soil thaws out in there. It's heated. Mike can put together clean flats and store them, and they can get a production line out there. So that all of the root washer, all that stuff, rinse conveyor, all that stuff has to get out, clean, put away. And so that'll happen for another 4 to 5 weeks. So there's nobody here right now except Ann and I, and Ann's busy full-time with the administrative and tax work and all the crap that goes with, all the crap that nobody wants to think about when they take up farming.
All the businessy stuff, the financial stuff, the planning stuff.
How about the 93 goddamn USDA census things? I mean, I come back in at 1st of December, there's 4 inches of them. They want to know one of my hydrophytic plant population census. Oh, my God. We just, I used to do them willingly, but I mean, there's so much stuff. And when you talk to, anyway, so we do what we have to do. But the water, the 23 water use thing I mean, thank God we have to do quarterly registrations with the state of New Hampshire. I did that thing would just be riddled with crap. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, but still, the thing took on the internet, even with what I had available to me, it still says 2.5 hours. Now, maybe I'm an idiot. And we established some attention deficit, but nonetheless, I stayed pretty focused on it. I had a couple of cups of coffee, and I got through it. But, that's the kind of stuff that goes on to farming, and people have to really consider, dealing with these various bureaucratic agencies that come along. It's part of life that wasn't there when we started. It is now.
Do you think that we'll call it paperwork? That legal and paperwork stuff has accumulated because it's been developed over time, or because you're a bigger business now than when you were starting?
I think both. Yeah. I think, but I'm not sure you can get, it'd be an interesting study to say because you can fly under the water, but it's like FSMA. $25,000 gross and you're a farmer? I don't think so. You think that doesn't buy much. It doesn't buy fuel for your little B series Kubota. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to get under the radar so you can develop to be a critical mass to make that kind of income. Now, what's really a problem here is that I am the diddlywit with the outfit. I mean, I will admit freely to God and country that my wife took my checkbook away 2 weeks into our marriage. And for good reason. I'd bounce a check, a couple of checks on for her. And she was like, "You're not doing this anymore. Get out of here. You tell me when you need a check. I'll give you a check." And that's been great. She's conservative, doesn't want to live beyond the means of the farm, and so development could have been faster and more freewheeling if I was probably left to my devices. But the system of checks and balances has worked pretty well for Edgewater Farms, no question about it. So it's anybody taking any kind of business advice from me would be wise to be very skeptical of it. But yeah, I mean, the business of paperwork, you can't fly. You got at any levels, whether you're today's small farmer and whatever that by government definitions is, whatever that medium gross is, there's paperwork. I mean, it's not just federal, but there's also state levels. Mm-hmm. As I say, we fill quarterly report. I didn't know Vermont didn't. Now that we own property in Vermont, it's just a very different animal. It's like the pesticide thing. We take some online training and every year, and it's pretty flexible. I mean, when Ann says it's time to do a pesticide report, I mean, I got 4 or 5 pages.
You got to make time for it.
You got to make time for it. Yeah. So it's very different. Water use, we have quarterly reports. I have meters and things. I have to tell everybody. This is very different right now. I think Vermont is now coming to that too, where they're going to say, surface water, drilled water. Where are you guys getting it? So we've had it 20, almost 30 years over here.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Water usage tracking.
Yeah, and at first it was kind of voluntary, and I can remember calling up the contact at DES and saying, I know the guy down the road's got a pump, and he's putting it on his apples and his strawberries. So why am I doing it? Why am I being? Is this? What's the point? It's like you say we have to do it, but you're not enforcing it. And the woman who was just a secretary said, "Look, Pooh, this is how it's going to be, and this is why you ought to do it." I said, "You don't have to do it. Probably get away with it for years before anybody chases you down." But he said, "You need to get on record with your water usage because water's going to be the new oil in short order." And he says, "We've already got issues in New Hampshire over who owns the rights, water rights on the Pemmy. Is it Lake Winnipesaukee Boat Owners Association? Right. Is it Plaza Way Country Club in Manchester?" And he said, you have a better chance of getting your water in the future, or your kids do most likely, if you are on record
claiming yours,
what you're using. You have a timeline that you can prove that you did it. So
that's an interesting perspective. Yeah.
So I mean, it was just some secretary, good information.
And I guess the thing that we're thinking about now in Vermont, at least some of the side conversations I've heard, is what are we doing with this data? Like, I know they were talking about reporting or whatever, and it was such a small amount. They're like, we put, thousands of gallons a day on the field, but like just out of the whole volume of the river, it just seemed like pennies. I mean, you've been tracking water for a while now. What have you, we'll say, gotten out of it, or what's the data told you?
Well, the data told, and it wasn't reflected in the national one. I made a comment about it. One of the things that New Hampshire picked this up, they used to have this really, took hours to do, quarterly. And, it was tough. It was, you punch in. If you don't get the zeros right, the whole screen would explode, start from scratch. But all of a sudden it changed. And a lot of it changed because they realized that water use is really dependent on climate. Mm. It's like one quarter one quarter in 2017, I might use 3 million gallons of water, and then next year they'd come back and say, "You didn't use any."
No, it rained.
It rained. I just don't have to. I don't want to. What do you think? I'm running pumps because I want to? No. It rain. We do it when we have to. So they changed it. They were really good about it. They made it so now it's I have to do it. And it's a nuisance, but now it takes, even in the middle of the summer, it takes me a half an hour, as opposed to 2.5 hours. And entering, and they were having to try to calculate. Well, what day did you use the most amount? So I know that kind of thing. And I think I think there was hints of that in the federal one too. I think a good agency, well, kind of looks itself and takes comments and stuff and redoes it, and they streamlined ours a lot. So I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm not sure what it's garnered. I think climate change is will be reflected on that for those of us that submit them, and if they have access to historical weather data, they'll see that, and that will make a difference. So instead of allotment, you get 25,000 gallons a month off of this well, they'll be able to say, look, I understand there's a drought
25 million.
Yeah, right. Well, it depends on that type of thing. And I think the other really good thing about it, we do we do a lot more on drip now. I've got a pile of number 30 sprinklers. They sit in the strawberry field. We have travelers occasionally that would break out, but most of the stuff goes, on plastic with drip underneath it. So we're conscious of it. We think about water. Now, you didn't think of the water in 1980. It's like, it is out the river. Run back the pump up. So let's get something happening here. So, yeah, it's different. It's different.
What are you excited about in your next year of farming?
Well, I think I'm mostly excited about how well our transition in ownership or management. I mean, it's not easy, but everybody's gets very excited. Oh, your family's involved, and it's like, and it's an ugly dance. It's a complicated dance. And, Ray and I have been standing in the dooryard spitting at each other so mad. I thought he was actually going to hit me one time. And if you know how big Ray is, you don't want that to happen. That's not a good scenario. But you get very passionate about things and very invested, and that's real difficult. And so, and for me, a lot of it is like, the hardest part for me is to all of a sudden feel like I'm diminished somehow. Mm-hmm. Why aren't you doing what I say? I know something, but I got over it. I'm getting over it. I'm kind of like, it's like, it's not. And Ray says I don't have to be here. Let's just stop, take a nap. It's kind of thing. It's fine. Yeah, it's not. You're still invested in it. There's no question about it. It's like, and you're invested in the people. The great people that have been working here for years and years. I got a guy who came to milk cows for my dad in '56. He's 93, and he does all our field work. He comes up, drives up 45 minutes from Bradford, New Hampshire, and he still gets around better than I do. I don't know. I mean, he gets on. He's sharp. And a couple of years ago, I said to Ray, we got a couple of 3-bottom rollover coon plows, and they weigh about 3 tons or whatever. And I said to Ray, maybe we ought George had up to hook out the plows, his first plowing of the year. And I said, maybe would you go up and just give him a hand, take a crowbar up in there? He just looked at me and said, Dad, for Christ's sake, George, the only one that knows how to hook the plows up on a farm.
You can do it.
We'll have no idea, type of stuff. I mean, he's patient too, So
yeah, you gotta have that.
I mean, it's all like, I mean, we all want to be like. I want to be like George. I doubt very much at 93 I'll be worth much to this farm, but I mean, there's these people. There's a family. There is a farm family. And the Jamaican guys are the same way. And Roy's been with us over 25 years. We know what kind of pizza he likes on his birthday. And he likes my spaghetti sauce. And, occasionally you get a big glob of that. And, so there's just a lot of other stuff going on. We meet great people. We tend to have an older crew. We have a much older crew probably but that's what it is now. And so the next year, what's coming up is always the anticipation that starts with, you never outgrow the seed catalog lost. I would admit that I'm not. Ray knows all these varieties. When I'm up in a prop house and I'm going especially on coal crops, what the hell is that? I never heard of that, and I have to ask him, and it's a new Brussels sprout or something like that, Whatever happened to Oliver? Oh, Dad, come on. I haven't had Oliver for 20 years. Come on. And so that's fun. it's always fun to see, there's been a lot of product development in the fall ornamentals. So that, is the melon. Where are we going to put the melons? Are we going to have a melon crop? Are there any new potatoes? I mean, it's still fun, still exciting. I'm much more apprehensive about how climate change works out. I mean, we didn't have the egregious messes that, the poor guys up on the Lamoille-Lemanoski rivers. Or even, it's like sometimes we forget the apple growers froze out. Wasn't an apple in New England that I knew of.
Right.
There was one orchard down that escaped it, and he was allotting apples to all his little farm stands. So you got the orchardists, and then you got the guys with 2-foot corn and, up in Franklin County. It's bad enough to
full
be
of silt.
Yeah, really, full of silt. Yeah, no, I mean, it's bad enough to be selling a product that you can hardly get any money for. I think dairy farmers are just like, how do they avoid getting their head cut off? And then they get this.
Right.
Can there be anything more depressing? And then, you lose crops, but you lose land.
Right.
It's like how and I have no illusions. I mean, we almost lost some land here, and I won't tell you how we got it back, but that's tough. That's on top of spraying for striped cucumber beetles, moving row covers. Boy, the cleanup this year that cleanup was ugly, and there's nothing like a wide row cover that's been swirled around your field, and it's full of dirt. So anyway, yeah. So I mean, yeah, you're always optimistic. If we weren't optimistic, we wouldn't get out of bed.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I think I personally still have that. I'm excited the way Ray's able to do different things. I'm always excited when Sarah and Ann bring in some funny looking heuchera, this beautiful amber color. Where'd you get that? Where's that? Oh, that came from Landcraft, and it's really, God, that's pretty, whatever, and that kind of thing. That excites me, and I'm propagating a bunch of geraniums now. I'm really, every year, hope springs eternal. It's like I'll probably always be excited, but I am concerned about, the fact that the maples are swelling, the fact that my lilacs bloomed at Thanksgiving. I mean, there's some real serious shit afoot, and I mean, how do we know in the absence of long-term crystal ball what we're supposed to do about it? We're Larry Allen once told me, he said we're talking. He's an apple grower, and he was saying, "Well, I'm not going. They're having a national meeting. They used to have it at." Out in some ski country, and they were going to have it at Las Vegas, and he said, "I ain't going to Las Vegas." I said, "So I thought you want to get away and have some fun." He said, "Jesus Christ," he says, "I do more gambling in 1 week at home in Westminster than I do. I have no desire to go gamble anything else, And so, and it's true. I think we live on no matter how much planning you do, you live on the edge. All of us. A couple of bad years, and even we'd be on the edge. We'd be looking at condominiums or whatever. That's maybe exaggerating, but it's not that far off.
Right.
We've been here 50 years, so yeah, we got a cushion. But I think some of these smaller growers
doesn't take much to rock the ship.
Yeah, I mean, no matter how good they are, no matter how much successful, if they put 5 successful years together, they're still investing, capitalizing upward, and they're carrying debt, and they can't take 2 years of this kind of nonsense. So I don't know. I'm very, I said to one of the Congress people, they were worried about us, and I said, I'm worried about food sustainability. We hear about it all the time. But, we can't do it. I mean, we can't, no matter how good we are. We're not going to, we have to, federal government has to get behind getting victory gardens and processing back on people's mind, get them out of golf and second homes. Because I think think it's going to be time. I think it'll be good. There are a lot of opportunities for vegetable growers. I think we probably had never better opportunities if we can survive the weather changes.
Are there practices that you've implemented that have added resilience on your farm and hopefully, made your farm a little more durable for these climate type of storms?
I think you work pretty hard trying to. I mean, it's a cover crop. You think about where your crops are going to go. You go to, minimum irrigation. You try to build humus. You add amendments. You try to all those practices. That have been talked about. That Vern talked about the first year he showed up at a Burlington vegetable meeting. All those things have been important and are doubly so now. Whether we get into permaculture and can do that and make money, things like that. I don't know. There's a lot of but we got to be thinking. We have to continually think outside the box, and not just think about growing more and banking more money against a rainy day. We have to sort of say we have to be committed, to spending money on, things that conserve soil, build soil, and we do. It's like we spend, we spend probably a higher percentage of than a lot of people do, I think, on cover crops because we're on sandy soil. I mean, when my first organic test down below was like 1.4, and I can remember going to a meeting, and I said, I've been here 30 years. I got it up to 2.4, 2.7, and they're like going, well, if you're cropping every year that field, I think you're probably doing okay. Well, we've lost manure, so, we have to look for other things. But, I think the whole process about soil stewardship is we have to think about soil stewardship almost more than we have to think about growing good mochums without alternaria. You know what I mean?
Right, because there's several ways you can go about to make things more resilient. You're mentioning soil. You can make buildings more durable or in safer locations. You could increase crop diversity and range of what you're doing. It seems like soil is kind of the thing you'd focus on as far as resiliency standpoint.
Well, I mean, we've also, I mean, that's sort of my bailiwick, I think Ray, although Ray is he's much better. I think he understands the importance of that, really does now. And it's like, he'll say, we're done down there. We have a no-till seeder. And he's like, I want to see it. I'd like to get that down as soon as can. So, out comes somebody goes out, fill mows, and out I drag a seeder or whatever, and try to minimum till as much as possible. And we're doing a much better job of that. We will never do, I have a 2-row no-till corn planter, but we tried it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because we're not willing to ramp up and change the fertility practices that work for everything else on the farm. We'd have to probably go with anhydrous. You can get lucky with no-till corn planting with a cover crop, but delivering the fertility, if you can't, you got to get down in there somehow. That's been our setback. But anyway, so building fertility through cover cropping and adding amendments, whether that's wood ash, short paper fiber, rotating out with but you can't get cow manure anymore. Right. I mean, even despite FSMA, even if you wanted to get it, you can't get it. There's less cows around. I have relatives with cows, and you can't get cow shit out of them. Because it's a resource. It's a valuable resource.
Dairy farms aren't our neighbors anymore.
That's right. No, they're not. They're saying, "Hey, come clean out my pit for me." No, so you have to be looking at all these other strategies. One of the ones we were doing is I had Laura Johnson down here. I was trying to assess, what nitrogen crops that she's her focus is pollinators, but I was kind of saying I had some land and said, I'd like to see some of these different types of clovers and things and see how productive they might be, and whether they might something we might switch out from peas and oats and vetch and type of thing, and maybe maybe we would ramp up and put 2 or 3 acres down to white clover, white sweet clover, and that seems to be the one that does biomass. But most of the clovers, red clover, but Berzeme, crimson. She had a couple others in there, and they didn't seem to. Biomass was going to be an issue, but I'm going to try. We're experimenting a little to see, what the possibilities are for nitrogen, as that's going to be. Yeah, that's going to be huge. Although they tell us the price of fertilizer has gone down considerably this coming year. So it's like gas. We're buying gas for $2.84. Well, that just confuses me.
Right.
I don't know what that means. I'm not a conspiracy
theorist. It ebbs and
theorist.
it flows.
That's right. It's like, it's a...
Why is everything else getting more expensive, but then some of those drop?
Yeah, right. Who's the great Oz in all of this? Who's behind the curtain? I don't know. It's tough. And you can get yourself wrapped up in social media till you. I just don't. Oh, this is $2.99. Okay, I guess I'll drive over and fill up while I'm here. Well, But yeah, so I am excited about. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic for the future. I think more of it will involve covered. Pipe and poly, and that bothers me because I just hate poly as a product. It's like when you're done with it. We've used Biotilo, so the full field thing is not a problem. But we're landfilling greenhouse skins. I mean, there's only so many wood piles in our sphere of influence that I can park, a 100-foot skin up there and see it gone in a week, that kind of thing.
How many tunnels do you have?
More than Jack. I don't know. I think I counted them up above. There's 14 here. There's 4 down below. That's 18. 10 up above, 28, 29, 33, 34, 35.
Holy crap.
Yeah. 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 It's funny. And none, they're all Ledgewood greenhouses.
Yeah.
And
unlike Jack, he's got, we'll call it a museum. They're all a little different. So you've standardized for the most part?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons. Okay, the anecdotal story. My first water wheel transplant I ever bought, I drove all the way out to Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, the Mennonite place. I had a single. This is before Knowles, before Zimmerman and everything. This guy's making them out there. And I got one. And I got in, and I wrote the guy a check. It's the same place. You get out there, and the buggies are all lined up front with the horses and the lights, But inside, there's guys with, welding helmets and CAD programs. Anyway, so I picked up this thing. We got in the back of the truck, and I gave him a check, gave him a bill of sale. I said, "Is there a parts manual or anything with this thing?" And the guy just, without even breaking a smile, just like he says, "Thee will never need anything to repair this machine that thee cannot buy at a hardware store." And and so having one type of greenhouse, I mean. We can reskin 6 or 7 of those, in a full day.
Yeah, right. You know how to work with those.
Yeah, and right, exactly, and that's pretty much it. I mean, yeah, sure. I'd love to. My dream as a kid was always to have like a little gable Lord and Burnham estate house with a Lord and pull the chain and a gable vent open, side vents, crank them out. But I mean, to get all that in today, I mean, guys up there on those Harnois dealing with those vents and the more electrical stuff, and I don't know. It's just for us. It's cruder. It's simpler, and we can get everything at the hardware store. Ed always gives us an extra bottle. I got more 1/4-inch carriage bolts lying around here that have never been used. I really should recycle some of them. But yeah, no, I mean. They do a good enough job. They don't do they. Are we getting maximum? We're not shooting. I said to somebody at a strawberry meeting, we're not shooting maximum for maximum production. I got an idea how to guarantee 16,000 quarts, and I don't like the idea very much. And I also know that the inputs are pretty high. So we try to say, how do we make money doing this? You know, and so far we haven't seen anything besides a matted row that makes any sense for us. Even though we're on diseased soils, we have problems. You know, sometimes I wish Ray wouldn't try to push 3 years out of them.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, if the year's right and we can feed them enough in the spring and the weather permits, we do pretty well out third year, but not often anymore. I mean, but, you know, yeah, you can get caught up with drip and micronutrients and stuff like that. We try not to. We try to, everything is standardized so we can put everybody. It's like, you know, the first 80-degree day forecasted out here. Anne's in a panic. Everything's going to burn up.
Yeah, because it's in April.
Yeah, it's like, well, April now. But, you know, usually it's May.
Yeah.
It's not, first of all, you know, it's not going to do it. Finally, she's upset enough so that Ray says, okay. And he takes Roy and Mike, and they get a bunch of Pepsi bottles, fill them with water and strings, and they throw them over, and the shade cloths go on. And, you know, and I'll say, could you do mine up? Could you one up above? Yeah, we can do that. And, you know, for lunch, 11 greenhouses are covered. Boom, done. And so that's the benefit of standardization.
Have you mechanized at all? I just thinking of 33 greenhouses with hand crank roll up sides. That does not work.
No. Well,
you need a big crew, I guess.
Yeah, no. Well, you know, I think you know, one of the things that happens. I got old. I'm the guy here, and we used to say, you know, the cranks were big. I mean, we used to do those bars with the cross things on them, you know, and then somebody got a hand whacked one time, and then we went to cranks. So we got cranks on. That was good, but still, if things are not perfect on those cranks, if there's a little wee-wah in there, you know what that's like.
Yeah, right. They don't crank easy.
They don't crank so easy. They don't crank up high. So anyway, Ray 2 years ago, and last year he bought a bunch more, and I think we'll see some more go on this year. I think you know, at the end of the year
of the automated roll up.
Yeah. And of course, I can't even run a cell phone. I mean, I can't even run an electric guitar. I don't have a pedal. I got rid of my pedal board in like 1990. I'm done with this. You know, a jack goes into a Fender Deluxe Reverb. Close enough. And then the guy goes through his board. He adds digital harmonization. But that's my level. I don't do that. And so, like, we have a Monet system that monitors the temperatures. And it's tied in with the roll-ups. And, you know, when it gets hot in there, things happen. And that's a tremendous labor savings. And Ray's really very good at that. I mean, everything he's done this year, I'll see how it goes. You know, I'm pretty much, anything he's done has worked out to be a labor-saving device. This year he spent a bunch of money on a portable conveyor that extends.
Yep.
And so that we
can... A harvest conveyor?
No, just a rolling rolls conveyor. It takes out. It's got a motorized belt on it, and so when we can the way we do it currently, we just build our flats and pots and things over there, put them in apple brinks, bring them over with the skid steer, take them in the house as well. Now, all that stuff can happen. We just roll up the conveyor, put it out there, and you know, two guys can fill the house with hanging baskets. We don't have to. There's not so much compaction on the soil. There's a whole bunch of benefits to be gained from that culturally, as well as the labor saving and people walking, you know, one person with 6 flats walking up and down the thing. Now it just goes, hopefully it'll just go out. So, yeah, I mean, those kind of things, you spend the money, but then, you know, like the roll-ups, yeah, he's got his eyes open on that kind of stuff much more than I do. I get overwhelmed when I open a greenhouse grower. You know, I see stuff like that. He's got the TerraTac.
TerraTac, yeah.
Yeah, he's got that. I am concerned about service and parts on that.
They have a bunch of stuff. They're cultivating tractor or their greens harvester or.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Ours are pretty much as a cultivating tractor.
Okay, yeah.
And he got it, and he's been on it, and you know, if he's comfortable and he can get on it and make the time to do that, that pays dividends. You know, I have only backed that tractor in 3 years out of the shop, and, you know, and I had trouble starting it because I didn't hit the right disconnect button. But be that as it may, stuff like, you know, And, I think yes, we have that level. But we also got old toolbars with, sweeps and knives and things.
Mm-hmm.
The ratty old iron has a place on the farm. We're pretty well set up. We always wish we could do more with everything.
I want to talk about the transition in management. How long ago did that start, and how has that transition how did it go? How's it going?
Well, of course, we never expected our kids to come back at all, because we never took summer vacations till Sarah was a senior in high school. I kind of thought that maybe they'd resent the lifestyle, and Sarah was vocal about it as in high school about, this sucks, and it did in some level. If you, unless you have some reason to really like it, if you're a teenager, why would you? And Ray was okay with it. He didn't, but I didn't want to push that, so we never thought it was going to happen. And when Ray came out of college, he was fully certified to be a climbing instructor, Knowles instructor, adventure education. He had all that stuff. And I just thought, maybe he'll come back when he's 30, 35. He'll do that. But, he's got to, why wouldn't he want to do that? Why wouldn't you want to be in Glacier and fly fishing on your day off? I would.
Right.
And, but it turns out, and I didn't know this till like a month before he graduated, that he was coming home. And I got that information from his cousin. I said, you know what, Ray said anything to you about what he's doing? She said, I think he's coming home to work with Roy. That's what he told me. I said, really? Okay. So he was here, and so that all of a sudden like presented, it's not just the summer. All of a sudden he was, acting like he was interested in the thing. We had another guy who's worked for us for 40 years, and he still works for us. But so we started inquiring about, I said, you want to be part of this thing? And he said, I'm already involved with your dysfunctional family. I don't want any part of this. Thank you very much.
I don't need any more involvement than I already am.
It's bad enough. He said, I'm just already picking up the pieces for your wife, for you. So I don't want to get involved in the So it came down. Sarah really didn't want. Sarah likes the farm, but she doesn't want that kind of locked in. She'll lock in for the greenhouse stuff, and she loves that. So we try to pay her well for that, for her services, which are needed. Mm-hmm. She's a highly valued employee, but she does not want to go to the farm stand, and so that's her choice. And Ray's willing to sort of take responsibility for the whole thing. So I don't know how many years ago it was we started saying, well, once you hit the 60, 65, you start saying, we better, it could happen. You start seeing your buddy, whoa, what happened to Bill? He's dead, and stuff like that. So we thought, let's get the wheels in motion. We had our county agent at the time, Seth Wilner, who's now Hampshire Farm Business Management guy. He was a county agent. This was an area that he was interested in. So, we had holistic farm meetings. People talked about what they wanted to do, what they didn't want to do, the direction they'd like to take it. And that sort of morphed later on into, talking about estate work and things. So we're pretty far along on all of it right now. As I say, Ray's in charge of, on paper, he's in charge of the LLC. Mm-hmm. And, we're employees theoretically or whatever, or maybe
technically speaking,
indentured servants or whatever. So we're getting there. We're getting there, and but beyond the legal mechanics and that type of stuff, changing EIN numbers and things like that, I think everything works pretty well. I'm sort of I'm not the guy to, I get on my knees, I can pick 2 flats, and then somebody's got to lift me up and carry me to the end of the field. Those days are long gone. But, I still do tractor work, I still do propagation, seeding, gopher deliveries on occasionally, whatever, that kind of thing needs a light physical work, some of the mowing. There's plenty to do, for gumpers and gophers. So that's my title, and is in charge of all the book work and all the administrative stuff. And I think we're trying to figure out who we could get to replace her that we would have the confidence in and would do the job that she does. And that will be an expensive nut to cross and a difficult one, because you're working with a family. It's essentially a dysfunctional unit anyway. So
you've figured out how to make it work together. But
so those are the challenges, and that's where we are in it.
It's time for our special segment. What's in your pocket?
I'm not a Leatherman fan. I'm just kind of like, I think I just have one of those Johnny's knives. Not Johnny's, not the harvest knife, but the Victoria Swiss Army, the thin one. But there's always a knife. There's usually a large National Dobro thumb pick somewhere in the pockets, and they come out in the wash frequently. And then there's, I never clean my pockets up. I have snot rags and the regular stuff that comes out, chaff, potting soil in season, dead geranium leaves. That's it.
All right, I like this one. If you could restart knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
Is this sort of under the, what would you recommend somebody doing?
Sure.
I've gotten away with a lot. I'd call I'm the last man standing. If you're willing to do that, you'll eventually make it work and unless you're really stupid. But if somebody was smart today, and nobody wants to hear that, he said, boy, I want to get into farming, where should I go? I said, you can go anywhere. But the first thing you want to take is some basic accounting and business skills. It's like a lot of things. It's the communication of, it's the language of the business. And it's not the fun thing. The fun thing is the ag tractors.
Of course,
is the green weed fields. It's the pictures we take of our cover crops. That's the good shit. But there's this other thing too. And the same thing in music, I can play by ear. I can do a lot of stuff. I'm a journeyman guy, and I can fit in anywhere, and I can make a pretty modest living if I had to do it. But I wish I'd stayed in music school so that I could learn to write music. I don't mean write music like Nirvana. I mean write on staff, write in different clefs, understand key signatures, time. It was the language of music, because it's the same thing. You're marginalized if you don't have that. And I think as a farmer, you're marginalized if you don't have those skills, and you're not willing to recognize what they tell you. And it's the most boring thing. That's what I didn't want anybody to tell me when I was growing up either. But now, I don't think you can be lucky now. There's no gobs of land going cheap.
No.
And I don't know how young people should say, can get into farming with the capital costs of everything. $3,500 buy a pretty decent tractor in 1975. They wouldn't buy you scrap metals is what it'll buy you now.
Yeah, right.
So I think that if I had over to do it, I really try to know more about what I was doing. There were no models. There were no models back then. We were all learning from another. Jake Guest at Killdeer Farm came out of a commune. Let's have some pigs. Let's raise our own food.
Right.
And try to go like that. He developed beyond that. Bob Gray got on farming because he wanted to have something to sell in the summer to supplement his Olympic career. He had to self-fund. And he found that if he grew tomatoes in Putney, wow, that worked pretty good. So when he, one time push came to shove, he started doing more of the same. So everybody, and I don't know I don't think Howard ever took any classes, did he?
I don't I don't know.
You know, I mean, all the guys who are my contemporaries
Right.
came from different things. You know, they were ski racers or whatever. You know, I'm essentially a music major. You know, you know, and so we had to learn from each other. Dave Chapman was instrumental, and Elliot was important in getting. You know, they went to France, and they saw all the growing that was done then, the intensive stuff, and they brought that back, and we were going like, holy shit, it can be done, and this is how we do it, you know. And the industry grew kind of with us, you know. First it was old Planet, the Jupiter Wheel Hoe up in Heinsberg, you know. They reissued the Planet Junior thing, and all of a sudden wheel hoes, people knew what they were for. Everybody knew what they were for in 1880, but you know, by 1980, they're just hippie vegetable growers. So, yeah, I just say to anybody today, and you as an extension person, we always have this thing at meetings: is how do we get people to go to twilight meetings?
Mm-hmm.
Somehow we made time for it when we were less busy, but it's just so hard. I used to take the Jamaican guys. We loved going to. Outside of the fact you stop to have dinner on the way home or whatever.
Right.
But
Field trip.
Let's see what these guys are doing. Why do you do it that way? And you come back, you come on the way home, you say, well, Jesus Christ, that would never make any sense, would it? But sure look cool down there, that type of stuff. That's a lot of money to do it that way. But, anyway, I miss that. And I think,
the learning from your peers.
Yeah, just or go, make an appointment. Go up and say, I've been meaning to go up and see Hannah's Hannah Doyle.
Oh yeah,
yeah. She worked for us for a couple of years, as Mary Scopes did too. And these are all people who had a little bit of a foundation, and they're smart people. I want to see what the hell they're doing.
Right.
I'm sure they're doing some shit we should be doing. That's part of getting on the other farm. People, talk.
I think, like you said, now there are different models of farming. Could be CSA farming, could be market gardening, intensive vegetable production. If somebody wanted to get into, we'll say, a large acreage, wholesale, mixed veg operation, like what you've got, your 75 acres of field production. I guess two-part question. Do you think you would do the same thing, bedding plants and massive, field production? Or, and secondly, how do you think one would kind of get into that sort of operation now?
That's really sort of out of my purview, I think. I think it's really dangerous to, first of all, you got to really know something about your market. We've all had people. Howard was in a meeting one time. Some guy wanted me to assemble all these growers because he had a packing house in Hartford, Connecticut, and he wanted to buy all the tomatoes that we could produce, cherry tomatoes, all the cherry tomatoes. So we got, I don't know, I called up Chris Hemingway and Steve Fulton and Howard. Jake came down, David Pearson. And this guy went on, and it's like we thought, well, maybe there's a chance to ramp up. The candy coating, the lure is out there. I'll buy all you can make. And I'd heard that before.
Oh yeah, right. That saying is not new.
That's right. And it's happened to us the first year. I had a guy say, I'll buy all the peas you can grow me next year, and he did and he didn't even say anything to me until he was able to buy them for a couple of bucks a bushel cheaper. And then I was stuck with my ass in the breeze. Ann and I are picking peas, and we sold a few bushels to him at a reduced price, but he was, and they were nice peas. They weren't crap. I mean, they were nice. They were Knights, and they were 4 to 5 peas in every pod and everything, at the least. And so we got burned, and I said, I'm not going back. I'm never going to wholesale anything. I just went the other way. I'm never going to trust these people again. So I'm hesitant to say, let's get out and put 75 acres. There's a couple of guys in Vermont that used to do that. They'd have one good year on 1 acre, and next year they'd have 24 acres of it. You know what that does, not only to them, but also some to everybody else.
It ripples the whole market.
It's
the markets of these Northeast sizes, that it's a big impact.
right. So I am not a proponent. I wouldn't recommend to anybody. I think it's a recipe for disaster. These guys. I know there's big people that coming in and putting greenhouses up to produce. I mean, we got a cannabis operation across the street here, across the river, and I bought some LED lights, just a little couple of strips for my propagating bench up there. They're expensive, but I mean, over here there's like 9, 35 by 135 Harnwas or whatever over there. And I met the grower. She's a sharp woman, really smart, but that's a lot of dope.
Yeah,
that's a lot of dope, And so, how much? It's like CBD. Wait a minute, we went from 1/2 acre to 60. Oh, we can hope there's nobody around to process it. Who knew? I mean, it's like boom. Yeah. No. So I kind of like saying, boy, that's a dangerous route to go. I'm more of a you got to test the waters and keep your day job. I think. I don't know. I think they got to have deeper products. We were fortunate. I mean, we had, I didn't, of course, back in the 70s, it didn't make much less than you do for 4 hours now, and the travel's more expensive, so there's much less money now, arguably, than there was then. So I was making pretty good weekend warrior money, and Ann was teaching, and, we had the strawberries. So a couple of years you could see things develop, but it developed at a comfortable pace. It was first greenhouse was not a range; it was a 40 by 10 pit greenhouse with old cypress sash. I got rid of that. So it was incremental steps, and I think, I like to say to myself, well, I would have done this in a bigger way, and you would have done a different structure if you knew. I wouldn't have put up a pit greenhouse with a Ashley wood stove in it because there was some book that said that's what you should do. I would I'd look around and say this is more appropriate. But yeah, I would say just be damn careful about your size. What you allocate for size. It's really easy to plow up an acre of ground. It's really miserable to be hand weeding carrots.
That's right. What does sustainable farming mean to you, and how are you achieving it?
I don't know. I guess sustainable farming to me meant at the end of the day, you're farming in such a way that when you retire, when it comes to the end of it, you don't have to sell it for house lots. You can sell it as a farm. And hopefully, because usually with any kind of business, the only thing you pass on in your business is your name, if it's worth anything at all. But I thought before the kids came back that it was my intent to make sure that this was either protected, through conservation easement, or that hopefully somebody might want to farm it, and that's hard for farmers to do. They can't let go. It's like I can't even I had trouble letting go to my kid. It's like
right.
What are you doing? And so you can imagine how hard that is if somebody has to drive by. They're retired. They got nothing to do, and they're driving by and looking at the guy screw up. The strawberries.
Why'd they put it there? I knew that field was always
wet. I told
wet.
them it was wet. Goddamn fools. Anyway, so that sustainable meant just being able to keep it in productive agricultural land, because even in the 70s, you could look back 30 years and say there's a pile of people coming down the road, and in 50 years we've seen a pile of people show up on the planet, and it's having some serious effects. And I think we need to be taking care of our ag land, among other things, like certain. Although we're doing a pretty good job of eliminating the population, I see. I suppose we are, but
self-correcting in ways.
Yeah, self-correcting. Well, that's it's all of that, and so. So that was always an important thing for us. And now, having Ray farm it is a real benefit. I mean, the other thing is that we can sort of stay here. We can even just take out a jug of iced tea if it's a hot day. I still
right.
participate in, the lifestyle or whatever benefits that are, I mean, the sustainability, the second part of the question, obviously, you're getting to is how do you treat your land? And I think that's really important. I think I've always felt that I grew up reading a guy named Louis Broomfield, and he was actually not a farmer to start with. He was a journalist. He was a writer for the New York Times or something. He had a book called Malabar Farm. And all he did is he bought a bunch of land and farms in that post-Dust Bowl area in Kentucky, Tennessee, somewhere. And he had anecdotal stuff about, he'd studied with Rodale or had met Rodale. And so he did kind of organic farming, and he noted, and, he made a good case for, moving back to old ways as opposed to endorsing all, new, highly mechanized, chemical type of farming. And this was, my dad had the book, actually. And it was a great book and a great read, and it made me think more about farming in sustainable ways. So the land component is, what are we doing? Everything we do, whether we're organic, certified organic, or whether we're conventional, the nature of what we do is just terrible for the soil. Soil does not want to grow strips of carrots. It wants to grow box elders in a most random way. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so while we're doing, and I heard a wonderful discussion by Rich Banana one time. Somebody accused him of being very conventional, because he is conventional to a degree. But his answer is somebody took him to task at it, because he always had the unenviable position of having to tell about the new licenses and pesticides. And somebody, you're always talking about pesticides, terrible thing for the planet. Why don't you ever talk about cultivation and stuff like that? And I thought, and he was nice to the guy. He was nice. He really was nice. He said, look, I grow lettuce on 65 acres. It's the stuff for Star Market. And he says, so here's the deal. He said, every time I go out, I have to look at the weather, and I put the plants in a certain point. Some point along the way, I says, this I know. I said, I can either put a chemical on my land, but the benefit of that chemical is I don't have to take my G out there 3 times. Because every time I take the G out there, I oxidize my humus. And so I said, you can decide, you have to make that decision, but you shouldn't make it in a vacuum. End of story. And that was his, and I think we think about that. We use some herbicides here, and but I'm cognizant of the fact that even if I'm doing, even if I can produce pictures of beautiful cover crops like everybody, I don't make the illusion that I've solved the problem. I think it's you just have to say, this is the best I can do under these circumstances, rain, wind, or with a year or whatever. This is the best I can do. I have to go forward doing the best I can do for the soil in the future, and I have to think about that. Think about that as hard as I have to think about keeping the Mocombs clean and alternaria off them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have to I have to make that focus, and Ray has to make that focus too. So.
You've been in business now 50 years this next year. What do you think has been one of the key things that has allowed the business to keep going?
Shit luck, I think. And last man standing. We had no business. There was no market strategy. I was married to Ann. I chased a woman up to Plainfield, and we wanted to do something that we felt was rewarding. This looked like an interesting challenge. We didn't have to. We were under some illusion that it might be easier than dairy farming. And I think that, and I understand that, I think my dad said that to me. He said, this is great, you've got time off in the winter. And, in those days we probably did. Ann taught, and I was down at the ski area, and I might be filling out a seed order, but snow's coming down like it is outside.
Yeah.
I was repeat the question. I'll try to address it more.
What's one thing that you think has really enabled you to stay in business for 50 years?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty serious about the shit luck thing.
Yeah.
To a certain degree. We landed in a great place. We had Bill Lord as a guy who encouraged us and mentored us with strawberries, and we had marketing possibilities. We had people close by, population center. That didn't happen by design.
Right. Good location.
That's a ship's location. You know, it didn't happen by design. It happened because, you know, I was in love with my wife. You know, it's not exactly part of anybody's smart business program, but it worked out. You know, I mean, we could have gone to Washington County, New York, and bought a real farm, and you know, grown all sorts of stuff. And who'd we sell it to? Who knows? You know, so we were lucky, and the area continued to prosper, and you know, we have an abundance of people who might be considered competition. We all seem to, you know, to be doing okay and doing well. So, you know.
What made you almost quit, and why didn't you?
Oh, I don't know. You know, I during the mid-'70s, when I first got up here for the first couple of years, one of the odd jobs I did, blue-collar jobs, was Ann's cousin owned Frederick Johnson pianos up in Hartford, and they were essentially the biggest Steinway piano dealer north of Steinway in New York. And it was an interesting job, moving pianos, but we got to drive all over everywhere, and we got to move pianos and rent pianos to, you know, the Eagles and Linda Ronstadt and things like that. But the moving piano things took a toll on me. I'm very short-legged, and I have a long spine, and I beat my back to a pulp. And it got hard. I mean, I had a lot of radiating pain. Most of my life, I actually had a lot of radiating pain. You know, I was taking 14 Advil a day, things like that. And I had, you know, having diagnostic stuff. I didn't really start having surgeries till 2003. But back then, it was really bad. My parents, bless them, I was pretty bad off, and my dad had come up to do some plowing, and you know, they could see I was in a lot of pain. I wasn't faking it. I was getting by. I was going out and hoeing and doing things, but I was miserable. You know, I'd have to go see me laying down on something hard or whatever, or trying to do exercises. And my folks came to me and said they knew I loved music. I don't think they ever embraced it, and they didn't understand it. You know, because I was in a bar band. I was the guy in the Trailways bus that got off and, you know, played Elvis, you know, music or whatever. I mean, that's the kind of level it would have been. I make $30,000 a year, luckily, if I was lucky back then. But that's the kind of career that was ahead of me. And my parents, bless their soul, they came up and said one time, he said, look, we can see this as being a hard road to hoe for you and if you want to go to Berkeley and get some real skills, we'll fund it. And that was a consideration, because it was like, by then, I had a pretty good idea what I had needed to do to make a living in music and how to get around it. Plus, it would do the whole thing we talked about, the language of music and whatnot. So that was a pretty tough consideration. I didn't consider it long because I wasn't confident that I'd be a good teacher. I think I probably would have been a good teacher, because it's like coaching youth hockey. The parallels are unbelievable. But at the time, I was kind of like, I don't know. I would like to be outside if I can just make this work. So I just kind of dragged the bad back along for years. You know, I would go, you know, really get a little physical therapy. I'd be better. I'd go along, you know. And actually, you know, the activity, you know, playing pond hockey and skiing at the area really helped it the years when I finally got on skis. And
Staying active, yeah.
And so that was all part of it. Yeah, but that's as close as it ever got, you know, because I think, you know, it's like everybody knows, it's not drudgery if it's interesting to you, and it's always been interesting to me and rewarding, and you know, and I'm the kind of artistic idiot guy that'll shut the tractor off and watch the sunset if nobody's looking.
Yeah.
And and we live in a beautiful area. We were just saying the other day, we've got this land in Windsor. Shut the wood processor off, and it's, the lights behind Mount Muscatney. It's parish blues coming up all over the place. Like, holy shit. And maybe that's just a function of age. Maybe as you get older that you take stock of that stuff more. But I've always sort of had that in me. I like being outside. Look at that. I don't see any 4-foot pigweeds.
Yeah, exactly.
That's perfect.
And yeah, right. You know what it takes to look pretty in nature. So
yeah. So.
Organic versus not. You're not organic, right?
No. No. I first got up here. I just didn't have the skills in the early 70s to do it. I didn't have the imagination, I was on the magazine cover of Organic Farming, but only because I was trying to do strawberries with weeder geese. Another bad idea. I wouldn't FSMA would not allow that now, but there were some guys that do it. But anyway, no. I had enough failure trying to, I was going into fields that had been atrazine and stuff, and there was just, that wasn't the limiting factor. Then there was no organics. Vermont was actually fairly early in on the certification process. And it was, I believe in organics, but it's not a level playing field. There's cosmetic things, and, we're in competition with conventional cosmetology of vegetables. Has to look perfect. People can say what they want about how they support it, but they pick over the organic stuff to get the perfect fruit, and that type of stuff. And so I just thought, I'm trying to make sustainability has something to do with profitability. And if I'm going to make money, I want the full toolbox, and that's pretty much the way I did it. When Ray came back, and his wife Jenny, who's also very involved with the farm, a CSA person, does a lot of our social media and stuff, and as well as a grunt laborer. I said, you guys want to transition? Do you want the certification? Do you want to make this commitment? And they said, no, we just want to try to make a living and do this, the best way we can, which wasn't, So it's kind of a half-assed mixture. I think Eric Seidman one time, he says, "You're our favorite wannabe organic farmer." So, but when the tarnished plant bugs show up in numbers in the strawberries, I want them, to go away. I want to protect them best I can. So, yeah, it's a crop tool. And I used to feel real defensive about it. Now I'm getting too goddamn old to worry. It's like, this is what we do. This is what we try to do. And I respect your choice. If you want organic, what I don't do well is have a customer start laying into me about what we can do. I caught a customer one time, complaining of I would shop here more often, but you're not organic, whatnot. And I said, look at the basil. I didn't spray it with anything. See the holes? I didn't feel good about that. But then the person went right over and, delivering me the, this kind of, I know a little thing. He went over and bought a big bunch of grapes. And I said, wait a minute, wait a minute. You just bought some Chilean grapes, which most likely have DDT on them. So what are you doing here? You got to dump, this kind of thing. So, and that's not the face of retail you want. I cannot take shit well. Something about when you hit 40, 45, all of a sudden it gets worse, I can tell you. It gets worse. I think one time my daughter, I was sampling cantaloupes up there maybe 10, 15 years ago, and the college students seemed to be feeding themselves and, hoarding and not buying anything. And I called their attention. It's not a feeding frenzy here. The idea is that you try it and maybe buy something. And, they were chagrined enough so they at least quit eating cantaloupes.
Stuff in their face.
Anyway, Sarah came out. She said, Dad, she put her arm around me. She said, Dad, I think we're good here. I think we got it from here on. And that was my last, invitation to do anything at the farm stand. So
back to the field.
Yeah, and it's tough. That's all. Retail is is another tough part of what we do. And we need to be retail. I mean, I think all farmers, with the CSA or whatever, you have to, as much as you can out of your laborers, it's a long winter,
Right.
Anyway.
From Vermont, there are a lot of, and I work with a lot of organic farms, and many of them are very vocal. And I think there's actually, out of Vermont, I work with more organic farms than not in the vegetable space, which I think is unique for the industry.
It is, but it's always been thus, and there's less attractive. The national organic standards, I don't know how many people are doing the real organic or not, but to me, the national organic standards has diminished the whole concept of, because you can look, I mean, it's like, I've had this argument for 20 years, and I don't know if you can still do it. They don't allow biotilo. I mean, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But, the fact of the matter is that is not the position they should be making you people grow on, making the organic people grow on biotilo or biodegradable. They've trumped up, Eric tried to explain it to me several times with the rationale, but it's trumped up, I mean, nothing in the field versus, our farm, it would not be a wheeler load. It would not be 3-wheeler loads. It'd be a tip trailer of stuff going into a landfill. It's bad enough that we can't recycle our greenhouse plastics because of the fossil fuel industry. It's unconscionable that the national organic standards will allow the things that they allow. So, if I just, it annoys me that so many people buy the label. I have the utmost respect for the Paul Harlows and the Jakes and, David and all the guys that do what they do organically. It's harder. They're better than me. And I'm happy to say that, but, it doesn't mean as much as it did when Vermont controlled its own destiny. I think I've always said that. I said, when Vermont was running its certification, they should have never given it up. They should have remained the Republic of Vermont and kept that, because it really meant something, and they could justify why they did what they did. This whole thing about, how many acres of grazing and stuff, that's just crap. Purdue's chicken as opposed to Misty Knowles. It's pretty dramatic.
Right.
So No, I like to think a lot of those guys that I've gotten a lot of what we do here, out of sharing information and doing what we can to model ourselves as best we can after a more organic model. All we have to do is, take away the pesticides from all of us, and it's a level playing field. And I think it's involved with the National Organic Standard. But as far as the practices on Edgewater Farm, I would like to be able to not have to use some of the things we use sometimes.
You mentioned how you use Biotello or biodegradable plastic mulch. How long have you been doing that? And if that's part of your field production system, how come you still choose to go matted row with strawberries?
We've been doing it at least 25 years. We were some of the first guys to... Michael Smith saw it in Italy. Michael Smith is a cress cultivator guy, if you don't remember, short guy. I think he's still at the cress, but he farmed next door to me. And he loved technology. He went to the Italian show, and he saw this stuff, and he said, we'd had photodegradable plastic before, but that, was just shredded and ended up in the trees and really didn't go away much. But he said, this is just cornstarch base, and they're going to get it in Canada. Eric's going to get it, and, that does all the row covers. And anyway, he had it. He was going to get some, and we got it. And, it worked pretty good. It wasn't 1.5 mil black plastic, but, at the end of the year, mow the tomatoes and the peppers off, and by spring, gone for the most part. nothing left. And so there was tremendous upfront cost, but there was just not all that swag that had to be gathered up and put in a landfill. So we thought that was really appropriate. So we're using it for that. Okay, so that answer, we've been using it ever since. And the second part of the question was plasticulture berries.
Mm-hmm.
We tried plasticulture berries. It's really labor intensive. It's really hard to get the second year out of them because crowns, it's great. Of course, they had chandlers in those days. And chandlers, they were wonderful for 1 year, but you got 1 year out of them. And so now you got the expense of plastic. And, and then you got the extent of they're sticking way up because they want to get through the plastic. So the crowns are exposed. Mm. And so they take a beating the second year. Then you got to pull up the drip tape out of plastics, out of strawberries. And, it's just more infrastructure and plastic. So every once in a while we talk about it. We've done it 3 or 4 times, and it's like, this is a mess to deal with, and it's not. We don't enterprise it probably as closely as we should, But the gut feeling is that this isn't worth it. To renovating. We tried to renovate for a second year back when we tried, for a while. First couple of years we tried conventional, 1.25 mil. Black plastic, but it just, you got a runner clipping and all that type of stuff. And I'm sure you can go up to Charlie Gray, he'll tell you a different story. They love it, they love it and it works for them, but at some level. But it just doesn't for us. I mean, it's just a little more kind of holistic or organic, to misuse a word. But, I think I'm not so sure that drip tape is not, Dave Pearson, up in Bradford, I don't think he gets the credit that he does. He's a small operation, but he's been growing good berries on the same 11 acres for 60 years. That his father's been growing on that same ground. They have never fumigated. They never, he just rotates around the best he can do, and he puts drip irrigation under his plants, and he feeds them, and he gets really good results. Not earth-shattering, not record-breaking, but so I always looked at his model and say, that boy's no fool. That works really well. Now, does that translate down on our soils? I'm not sure. But, always, if we ever got really pent up for space and stuff, and had to say we've only got fruit. 2 acres of berries a year. That's it. That's all the land we're going to devote to that. Then that would be different. Then we might look at something more intensive or whatever. But yeah, I'm just not that much of a fan of black plastic and black tape and a lot of extra work. As I said to Raymond, my mantra's always been, if you want to do something, I'm happy to, let's do it. But what are you giving up to do it? Mm-hmm. What responsibilities can you give up to make time for this? At one point, I think he was really interested in grapes and stuff. And we put out some table grapes. We had a few, the Jap beetles had a heyday most of the time. But I said, let's, if you want to, we did that way a couple of years. And I said, look, if we're going to do this, you want to do table grapes, let's talk to George. I'm getting old. George Hamilton was doing grape trials, and he was really into it. I didn't see the numbers as being worth the labor, but I said to Ray, if you really want to do it, this is crop you want to grow. Let's put in a critical mass so that Popsy will get on a sprayer and spray them.
Right. Let's turn it into an enterprise, not just a little thing.
Do it. Yeah. Let's get the trellising, get the plants, and do it up. And by that time, he's kind of like, it's like I can see that, carrots might make more sense, So anyway, that's kind of how the decisions get made around here.
How many strawberries are you doing?
We're fruiting about 5 acres a year.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and less of that. You know, it's pretty much wholesale, retail. Pick your own is really a hit or miss due to the weather. I mean, when we first cropped in 1976, I think we picked enough quarts for the family, you know, and strawberry shortcakes, and the rest went out. Pick your own. Now, was it a clean harvest? No, probably not. But I mean, it really put us on the map. There was only other person was Stu Shepard, and then the Grays were in Heartland Four Corners Farm. Actually, we went up there and looked at it, and they bought it the week we looked at it. So it's really kind of interesting how it really worked out. But so that was an enterprise that worked for us. But it was all pick your own then. I mean, we used to have, for a while, we were in partnership with our neighbors at Riverview Farm, and Paul and I had two, walkie-talkies, and we were exhausted. We'd park, we'd have 40 cars out there at a time, and we were just trying to find places to park cars. It was just different. Now it's like you go down, and if it's a foggy morning, there'll be nobody there till 8:30, 9 o'clock, and they don't pick anywhere near the volume. I mean, we used to have people that would come every day, be there 6 o'clock with their coffee and their families, and they either resold them or did something with them or processed them. They'd routinely take out 150 quarts a day. Family.
So you've noticed a decline in pick your own.
Oh, yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know whether it's economics, where, use of time. I think it's got a lot to do with the economic demographic and a disconnect. It's entertainment, I mean, people used to give these slips, you had a sliding scale of, you pay so much to 20 pounds, you pay a little less at 25. Once you pick, 150 pounds of berries, you were cruising, and you were paying very little for it, and we were happy to have you. But that, nobody picks 20, I'll come up with 6 people that pick 20. That's it for the year. So down here, it's entertainment. And you can tell by the weather. I mean, I used to go out in the field and say, you got to get out of here. There's a storm coming up the river, and that's aluminum pipe. You got to get out of here. I'm telling you, can leave. And people would pick in the rain. They'd pick in snow. They'd pick in snow. They get strawberry season. It was just different. Come with their cups of coffee, and a bunch of elderly family members. Yeah. They just get on their hands and knees and do it, And they pick clean, and they were just great people to have. And you became great friends with all. Christmas time, you get a card from them, or somebody bring us some strawberry jam or something, whatever. It's great. It's just very different now. Ann still does the pick your own, and she has a woman work with her. There again, it's harder for me to go out and see the waste. There's no berries out here.
I filled my quart in just a few feet.
Right.
Are there any other kind of changes in the market that you've observed?
There's a demand that wasn't there, 20 years ago. Yes, we also always have trouble. Comes a time we have trouble. We have stuff we can't get rid of it, and but by and large, it's more people seeking growers out for stuff. Whether it's people have little processing things, caterers. We have a caterer that has become a big account for Ray. Really, a caterer? They buy that much? It used to be restaurants and stuff, but we don't do the restaurant because other guys in town have done it, and it's their business, and so we haven't looked into that. We'll do farm stands and other people that come to us. When they come to us, Ray puts out a list every week on a cell phone. This is what we're going to have extra this week. If you need it, give me a buzz or whatever. And so that works. But I think that all translates into there's more demand than there used to be. There's certainly plenty of growers around. We got a guy, just say this. And there's growers I don't even know.
Right.
Cotley, so I say, Ray, who's a Scotney Harvest Farm? Where are they? That they're in Reading, so they're in Brownsville. I know Brownsville. Where are they? And so there's constantly, and that's why I say I kind of miss. When I was president of New Hampshire Vegetable Growers Association, I really meant to blast off one week and just go all the places that turned up, because I wanted to get membership back. Wanted, we didn't have the robust participation that the Vermont does. I mean, there were people I said, I see you at the Vermont meetings. I know you belong. How about some dues for, Becky Seidman? You could help us out. Anyway, so.
Earlier on, you mentioned no-till corn, your 2-row seeder, and how that hasn't worked great for you. Just to give you some background, last year was my first year taking over management of our family farm, Chamberlain's Farm up in Underhill. My grandpa has done it since 76, roadside farm stand, and 7 acres of sweet corn, 60 acres of hay, pick your own pumpkins. Used to do 2 acres of strawberries. So that's what I grew up doing. Now we've dropped the strawberries, but I'd like to bring them back. We're not doing the farm store, but I'm planning to bring that back, trying to breathe some life back into the farm. One of the things, we are conventional. I'd like to use less herbicides than we do. I've seen some real pretty fields of no-till corn, but I know it's also quite challenging to do. Andre Cantelmo has kind of speaks loudly about that. I know he's done it well, which has been interesting. So
Who's this?
Andre Cantelmo.
Oh, Andre. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I know he's done it. That's something that I would like to get towards is more no-till, less conventional, in both pumpkins and or sweet corn. So I'd be interested to hear your experiences with no-tilling on your corn planter.
Well, the first year we had it, we didn't have a no-till corn planter. We had my NRCS, my nephew Jeffrey McNamara was doing a lot of new things for them, and he had access to a 6-row corn planter, and so I think we grow a peas and oats crop or something after first thing in the spring. It looked robust, but I don't know what was there. But anyway, he came up, and Ray, and he planted a couple acres of what I call Hail Mary, end of the season stuff. Came up in a heartbeat. I mean, came up in 2 days. Astounding. Because it was, and so I really liked that. That's off. We had that year, I forget what, I think I went out once before a storm, and I spun on, like 100 pounds to the acre urea, something like that. And the corn was just astounding. It was like, I had been part of the New Hampshire's team that went down to Beltsville when they first started doing the cover crop and stuff. And so, we were just amazed at what we saw, these guys who, the conventional growers in Pennsylvania and everything. It was really astounding work. And so, we had this success, and it was like, oh, boy, we're doing this. This is our future. And a lot of it was because, at that time of the year, the moisture in the soil was perfect. I mean, it was just like, and it's warm. So you put it down there, and it's got the moisture, it needs to germinate. It worked great. And it grew well. And, through whatever events, timely application of fertilizer. And we did use an herbicide. I think we used a mixture of Roundup and Callisto at the time. And so the weed control was good. There might have been some Lasso in there, or Dual, or whatever, whatever standard corn fertilizer. And we'd put that right down on top of the peas and oats. And it worked great, and it looked good, it just was textbook. Well, the next year we did it in another field, and, came up great. Weed control came along, but fertility raised its ugly head. And so, we tried to spin stuff on. It was like we picked half a crop. So, and it happened pretty much the same way the third crop. So we really felt that, we grow maybe, we grow a little more now because we push the envelope so far into the fall. It's crazy. But, we don't grow a lot of sweet corn. And so, we would have to invest, in some sort of nitrous ammonia, injecting knives and things like that. And we have the planter and stuff, but, we just said this is a lot more infrastructure, a lot more capitalization.
In order to side dress the nitrogen that the
Or
corn
just
runs.
deliver, a standard fertility or some knifing it, knifing dry fertilizer in the ground, corn ground is like, it can be pretty dicey. You can burn your stuff pretty high, so, and most of the guys that do no-till do that, they have knives and inject that way. So it just seemed like my heart wasn't into it. We'd had 2 years of failure, and so that was like 4 to 5 acres of wasted time.
Right.
And I said, I think better we just, have open ground where we can manage fertility a little easier, and and just continue to do what we do with row crops. And so that's where we went down the road of getting a no-till seeder, which I think has paid better dividends, or is our concession to doing no-till like that. We really have reduced, tillage that used to open up seed beds and things like that with a no-till planter. They're expensive, but we worked out a deal within our CS where we did a quarter-acre pollinator perennials and stuff, and got some matching funding
for a seed drill. A no-till seed drill.
Yeah, it gave us a critical mass of money towards a seed drill. Yeah. So
you primarily use that seed drill, like you're saying, for cover crops and pollinator plantings. And
yeah. Well, not pollinator. I mean, we haven't done anything we've kind of scaled back. And NRCS came out, there's all these very exotic blends of things. And, it's like some of them, I was kind of like, we had a meeting up here, and I said, so Phacelia doesn't do much. It's a nice little flower, but what are we doing here with it? What's it? And they really did, I think the answer, there was an answer, but they also had sunflowers, and I don't know if this is the real answer or whether the guy was fishing and trying to come up with something. But he said, well, the sunflowers to call attention to the cover crop, because we're trying to promote this. And I thought, so sunflowers don't really do anything at all. So we're putting those in the mix because we want to show that we're doing cover crops. But I was looking at the mixes, and God, I don't know. I just said, we're not getting biomass. We're not getting nitrogen. So if we're not building carbon, what are we doing? We're spending a lot of extra money on this stuff. So I kind of went backwards on it. And now, we have peas and oats, and we have rye, vetch, and daikon for anything, and of course the vetch goes out of it by Labor Day because you really, you can go later than Labor Day, but boy, 1st October is just a waste of money. It'll come up another year as a weed, and not when it's supposed to. So that's kind of where we are. We get, pretty good biomass. I'd like to do more with, Sudacs and things like that but we've been expanding our land and our land usage at a, when Ray first bought his farm and came in, we thought, we got more land we'll ever use. Well, no. We're going later this season. He fill up he's young. He fills up everything, and that's good. But I thought, well, I'd have a full season stuff, and usually I'll have half seasons at best, because put something in there, and we'll use that for the third planting of carrots or something like that. Take it out at that point. That's sort of the thought process. So, but yeah, no, I like to see biomass, and I like to be convinced that we're getting some nitrogen in there too. I'm sorry, I'm digressing here, but it's been explained to me that all these different species, other guys say, they foster different biota in the soil. And so that's what I've heard. Which, yeah.
But like you said, you're looking at the big triggers.
Yeah.
the biomass, the organic matter,
yeah,
the nitrogen that really feeds the plants.
A little low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. Less so than each little I'm sure there is a lot of biological activity with a wide-ranging crop mix, but that's harder to measure.
Yeah, it is. And it's harder to justify. I think that's the other thing is like, so oftentimes you get these things, or Ray will say, we're going to pull a pipe out of that field. I'd really like to get that down to dry vetch as soon as you can. Well, if you're buying an NRCS mix, you have to have the foresight to buy that winter whatever specified blend. It's pre-bagged by Albert Lee in the spring and have it on hand. But that's not the case. It's farming. So you really need something you can go to L.D. Oliver, you can go to Connecticut River, Helen will have on hand. What do you got?
I just got to run to town and grab something because the space opened up. Yeah,
right. It always comes down to Brad Law. Brad, it's Pooh. Can you blend me some rye and vetch and have it? How soon can you have it there? And of course, he's very good about getting stuff on board. So,
I asked my colleague Chris last night. I said, "Hey, I'm going to talk to Pooh. Is there anything that you would want to bring up?" And he mentioned that you were an early voice in the FSMA and the produce safety rollout, we'll say. What was your involvement with that early on, and then how do you think it's gone?
Well, the original food safety shit came out in 2011, the original mandate. And Seth Wilner was our county agent. And so I think once they started looking at it, Seth came to me and said, dude, this thing's 1,400 pages long. We got to figure it out, And so New Hampshire really kind of got its act together. They had a committee together right off in 2011 of Heather Bryant, Seth, Jennifer Gonnett from the federal government, from the state government, Gail McWilliams, Department of Markets, Steve Fulton, myself, Trevor, and it's a pretty big. And we would meet periodically to in some way to read a portion of the original mandates and earmark what we concerned. We had concerns, and we had a lot of concerns. and it looked, the first writing of the FSMA mandate was draconian. I mean, money-wise, the things you would have to implement would be unbelievable. And so the other guy that was involved with this was Rich Bonanno, who was Farm Bureau in Massachusetts and a grower. He was friends with George Hamilton, and I'd met him a couple times, and we'd had a good relationship with him. And he would explain to me, because there's a lot of science involved. It's like, well, how does this translate, and how does this translate? And we just saw it was just going to be a big stumbling block. And I can remember having a discussion with a couple people in Vermont at the time who didn't feel, that this is never going to happen kind of thing. And it'll be straightened away. Well, it really didn't get straightened away. And so the committee invited the FDA to Hanover, and they agreed to come up and explain, as best they could. And we were loaded.
You had your notes ready.
What do you mean by this? You mean to say that this is going to, and they would, and so I think that all of a sudden that was sort of the tipping point where everybody said, holy shit, really? We're going to be doing this? It's like condemn 4 acres of produce if you find a bird turd in the middle of the field. And so, it was, and the trouble was, it was already, and we had, there was already a thing in place. USDA had CAP. Would have been fine. But this was another case of empire building. FDA wanted to get in on it. And I can remember they were in here looking at our wash setup one time, and I was listening to the conversation with the USDA and the FDA guy. And I finally interrupted. I couldn't control myself. I said, you mean you guys sit down the street from one another in Washington, and this is the first time you've met is on my property, and you got the same program? I said, shame on you people. I was pissed. I was so infuriated. And not one of my finer moments. But I mean, it was like, at the time, Mike Taylor was kind of says, this isn't that big a deal. I said, Mike, you're putting small farms out of business. It's a big deal.
Right.
Right. I said, we might survive this, but it's going to cost us a lot of money, and I know a lot of people are not going to survive this. So they started taking rewrites and criticisms. And, God love Heather Bryant. She did a lot. And then Chris was involved. There was another woman over from Vermont that he worked with before was left. Ginger Nickerson.
Yep.
Yeah, she was involved, and we were meeting and trying to sort the whole thing out. And it really, and I said before, our own group, I had the meeting, our annual meeting, and people were like, "This isn't going to happen." I said, "Dude, you better get your act together.
Happening.
You're going to have your underwear handed to you real shortly, and you're not going to like it. So you've got to participate now." And so we wrote editorials and did what we had to do. And, if I hadn't been president, I probably would have taken the passive thing, type, "Oh, this will work its way out. I'll find a way around it." Unfortunately, even with the rewrites, we had FDA running mock inspections up here. It was unbelievable. I kid you not. He showed up here. There were a couple of guys. One guy was a Latino guy working. He was good. He was kind of trying to temper us a little bit. You're right, but I think this can be. But this guy that showed up as head of the team, and he wasn't malicious. And he's just a bureaucrat.
Show up in uniform.
Yeah, really, a blue suit and a hat. He looked like an admiral.
Yeah.
It's like, what are we doing here? Who is this guy? And really, so we had to wash things out by the back barn. We had all the Nolts baskets all washed and set up there for the inspection, out on plastic pallets and right outside the side of the building. And he said, "Well, this will never pass." I said, "We want plastic. They're all clean, plus, And so he says, "Well, no." He said, "They're under the drip line. You need to put a shed here." I said, "So they're under the drip line. What, is there a problem? They're going to be taken out in the field and set on the dirt." I'm not sure I understand.
Take a step back and
you
realize.
Want to explain this to me? He said, "Well," it says, "the birds roost on the roof, and they defecate on the roof. It'll run down onto the baskets." So that's what we were working with. And he was going on. He was had Ray out there one time, because they have their protocols on if you find deer pellets in the field.
Mm-hmm.
They had dumbed down the condemnation to what do you do when you do these things. And so we said, not pick the deer shit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is this a trick question? What common sense dictate? Maybe you don't pick it out, you don't shake it out of the lettuce and put the lettuce in. What? I'm not sure. So he said, "Well, we're not sure of the full protocol." He said, "Well, what you need to do is to get a spade and pick it up and take it out of the field." And so Ray's going, "So that's a great idea, except for one of the things. What happens if one of the pellets rolls off?" Pellets on. Have you ever done that? Put deer shit on a round point shovel. I was like, "Well, I never thought of that." But that was, in that response, I never thought of that. Was the whole problem? It's like FSMA would have been. A lot of the problems with FSMA, it could have been designed better, and it could have been if they put farmers in the room when they do this stuff, and they did not. And they do it intentionally. They didn't put USDA in the room. And that was a real frustration for me, and what really aggravated me a great deal. Did it turn out okay? I think so. I guess we learned some stuff along the way. I think we all have. And we try to reinforce it every year. Training isn't a bad thing. And, knowing your water, that's been really interesting. It's been interesting, actually, in a way, the water testing and find out. I can remember one time we had a real dry year, and we were testing the river out of the water out of the river. I got into, for September, and I said, this is going to be soup. This is going to be fun. I'll send this one in. And it came back, and it was like 10 parts per million E. coli. What was it, 175 or 125 units? I called up Endyne Labs. I said, "How can this be?" He said, we're at the, right below Hartford. Hartford dumps into it. And the sewage treatment plant's right up the way. I'm sure they get most of it, but there's such low flow in the river. I had to walk out 30 yards to get the sample out of running water. And the guy said, look, he said, it's not, E. coli flourishes in warm weather. He said, so they can, they don't propagate themselves unless it's really warm temperature. Anyway, stuff like that, it's like, so you have a better idea, okay, so the river's flooded. We don't need to irrigate after the flood. You know what I mean? So it's going to clean itself probably. So you just learned some obvious stuff that was good. And, but I think it goes down to the person who shows up the day for inspection, your inspector. We have Vicki Smith, and Vicki Smith is our old organics inspector. She's about doing things as much by the book, but she's not looking to really make things hard for you. So I think that's really been helpful. The day the inspector comes, and he's got a white coat and he's got a biology degree from that. That's when things will get bad. And that's what I worry about. I think and the other thing that I don't like about FSMA or anything is that it keeps a bureaucracy on most things. That was just Ann, but rarely does any of these bureaucracies say, okay, we've achieved what we want to do. Okay, let's go home and do something else. They self-perpetuate, and there's always these upgrades and changes and water use and manure management, and they tweak it and up it a little bit all the time. So I'm concerned. I mean, I'm 73. I shouldn't really be that concerned about anything, Should be more concerned about my next meal or how long it is before Ray sips me off the Shady Pines. But, I right now I think it has served a purpose, but it wouldn't have served a purpose if we hadn't made a stink about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's good. It's good that you provided your feedback early on to help.
Well, it was,
curb some of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do. I think what we did is I was just a loudmouth, and that helped other people sort of think, well, that maybe it was worth looking into. And when they did, they realized how out of control the thing was, the original one. It took a long time. It was rewritten in 2014, and there were still things that were tweaked. So when was it, 2017? Was that the first one? I think so, somewhere in there, yeah. So, Ray deals with it completely now, and so far so good.
Produce safety is what brought me into Extension. That was the funding that got this position started. And we've figured out that a lot of produce safety is involved with post-harvest handling in the pack shed. Chris mentioned you made a significant investment in your post-harvest handling, bigger than you ever could have imagined, he says.
Well, I think that was, you always say if you had to do it over again. I really said, to get around this thing, let's not scrimp. When we put our farm stand up, we had a situation, we had a commercial kitchen going on. So, Mike and Ray were going to auctions and buying, used commercial dishwashers and sinks and stuff. And I kind of said, look, if you're going to have a commercial kitchen, why don't we just call the Department of Health, have the person that will be inspecting our kitchen come up and say, what do you think about this and what do you want? And we learned, it was great. And it streamlined the whole thing so easily. You don't need to do this, but buddy, these are you can't have this. You got to have a real grease trap. And, and it's like the fire department come in and said that, it's like the fire department came in and said, what are you going to do here? And I said, well, what can't we do? And he says, well, we said, we'd like to avoid an overhead fire system. That's going to put the kibosh on it. And the guy said, all you need is, he said, if you don't want to fry donuts and, stuff like French fries and donuts in here, you can get away with a couple of Halo fire extinguishers. Just do your bake and do salad prep and do your canning. It's the fryolator that kills you.
Interesting.
Done deal. So that worked really well up there. And so when this came up, we were involved and we could see what was coming down. And I'm still not sure about the brush washer thing. I mean, we still have one, and I think it, I'm not sure the whole cleaning of the brush washer thing is like, it's pretty hard, and yes, and so, and what qualifies as you really, most people don't eat the skins of their slicers and field cucumbers. They peel them, and even if they do, I don't know. We try to clean them as best we can, but there's got to be something in there, I would think. I don't know. But anyway, so we got that. We said that may not fly, so we really need to buy the rinse washer. That was big. Cooling was then draining, how we drained the pack shed. We were building the pack shed at the same time. It made no sense when you were building this big building to not do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
The pack shed, I think originally I was against it because I was kind of like, we're really going to store stuff and pack it out all winter? Is that what you want? When you could be, up at Smuggler's Notch.
Right,
I don't
right.
understand this. But anyway, it has that building, that structure, has worked out really well for not just for, increasing sales and profits, but also the efficiencies that were gained. I mean, we were essentially over in this little barn here, and we were having our arguments about having a pack shed. And Ray adroitly sometimes said, "Dad, do me a favor tomorrow. I need you to go get, 4 bushels of carrots out of the cooler and take them down to Chris." I said, "Okay." So I go out there and walk in the barn. It's just floor-to-ceiling stuff. The tomatoes over here, and fans trying to keep the fruit flies moving, a brush washer, a packing table, and then our little tiny cooler. I got in there. I had U-boats and dollies to juggle, and it was like a chess game. And I said, "Okay, all right. Well, maybe he's got it." But that it helped. I mean, it helps in the efficiencies, and
If you could have penciled out some of those gains from the beginning, do you think that would have helped your decision making in the investment of this big building?
I don't know. I mean, I thought we did a pretty good job of trying to be as forward thinking as we could about our needs and where we wanted to be in a couple of years. And, the response from Mike was, after the first year, we get the potatoes and sweet potatoes and the onions and all the stuff in there, and stuff out on the dock. It made the goddamn thing 3 times bigger. We'd have been better off, that kind of thing. And so, but as far as food safety, I think, it was pretty clean over there. We worked pretty hard at it anyway. But this one's a little easier to deal with, and we continually doing that.
What do you do outside farming that brings you joy?
Well, I think you told I have a bad habit. I like guitars and music. I like all kinds of music, whether it's stage, classical. I play in a little bluegrass band now. I played in R&B bands and show bands and stuff. And I like all kinds of music. So that's my recreation, whether I participate in a group format or whether I'm at home. My wife never has to worry about porn. It's always YouTube, So and it's all music. So that's I can kill a lot of time doing that. I like to fly fish. I used to skate in an old guys hockey league. And I used to ski, and those things have sort of escaped me as I've gotten older. So I still have music and read. I'd like to read more than I do, but the fact of the matter is this. My father once say, "Oh, you have your winters off." You don't, not really. I mean, you have slower times, but we try to do everything is predicated on trying to avoid moving in the winter a lot. Machinery doesn't function well when it's cold. It hasn't been cold. We were cutting firewood 10 days ago. It was great. It was beautiful, but
40s,
yeah, that's not happening no more. It's over.
Winter finally showed up.
I did it with a vengeance. With a vengeance.
Yeah. No, those are great. Those are great hobbies to, disconnect and take your mind off of things. Did you have any techniques or strategies in order to stop working Because the farming has a never-ending to-do list. So how did you stop at the end of the day, or has that been?
Oh, I think your age dictates it. I mean, we lament the days. It's like anything. We think of it as, I'll never be able to ski Tuckermans again. I would probably never get on boards again. That kind of thing. That's really disappointing. But if you think about it, it's just part of the process. There was a time I used to come in, at 6:30 and grab a beer and a sandwich, and I got one light on the old 420. I'm going out and harrow, the clinic field, and I tell you, 5:30, 6 o'clock at night in the summer, I'm whimpering. I'm done. I'm done. I'm tired.
Yeah.
So, it really dictates on the tasks you're doing. But I do all the spraying. I do a lot of the field work, and there's a lot of moving machinery around and stuff because we're spread out. We're not all together. And so, the day ends, and when it's convenient, and when other people are ending, it's still pretty late during the sunny part of the year.
Right.
Growing season. This is why I think farmers love this time of year. I don't know about you.
Oh yeah.
When it's 4:30 and it's getting dark, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but okay, yeah. It's getting cold. Okay, I'll go unload the wood box and make dinner.
Right.
I like that. Seth Wilner is also, has some sort of licensing, teach holistic farm management, and that's always the trick for all of us, and we all do, is just finding balance. What makes you whole, and what gives you enough time to decompress. And it's like we travel. I'm happy to travel with farm buddies. I mean, it's different. I mean, it is different, and you just exchange of ideas and you pick up knowledge, see different things. And I find that most of my farm buddies are fascinating. They are on the side. They were artists. They were politically motivated.
What do you think was easy or hard in the beginning, and it's easy or hard now?
I think for us, it was hard to be legitimate. When I went to college, it was all about conventional agriculture. The thought process was, you got an inert substance and you make things grow out of it, by adding NPK. And, that all changed in the 80s. So going back to why that's different. So you come out of college and, you put winter rye down and you're young and you're trying to grow vegetables. Immediately you're branded as some sort of I mean, I've always sort of gone through life with the farmers, and I'm older now, but, people get, they know who, they know I'm a mediocre guitar player and a strawberry grower. But in the old days, it was kind of like, be in bands and people would sort of like, didn't get farming. What are you doing? And why wouldn't you want to go down to SUNY, New York on middle of June? So they didn't get me. And yet all the farmers around here, I was just a hippie kid. I wasn't a hippie kid. I grew up on a dairy farm. I shoveled shit, but, I knew how to get baler twine out and pull calves. I milked cows that had mastitis. I got that, I wasn't expert at it, but I knew something about it. I wasn't a hippie. I didn't live in a commune. It didn't make any difference if you. So it's like the strawberries were a great breakthrough because that's something everybody wanted. And they didn't care. And when they came here, it became, they got great strawberries. Okay. Oh, he's a pretty good guy. Like these things. He's doing a good job, whatever. And so I think it was harder. It's harder then to have legitimacy and support to start out with. Now I think you come out and you can put out some flyers and go to a couple of meetings and you can drum up a CSA. I'm your local, I'm doing this down here. And people like that. You don't realize, I always thought people liked it that, it was just all about what I grew, but it isn't. It's how people perceive you and look at it. They like the way River Road looks. They like that the fact we have a nice-looking farm stand. That's really important to community. That makes them want to embrace you. So that's a little easier now, and that's important because that also makes you easier to develop sales paths, if you will.
Those were my questions. We went down a lot of rabbit holes. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that didn't get brought up?
And there were times, we said, when were the times you want to quit? I always said, the time would be for me to quit is when Emmy Lou Harris calls me and said, I need you to play bass. or Jackson Brown realizes that I'm his bass player, that kind of thing. But it would have taken something like that. As a matter of fact, I find the outdoor life, I find the physical activity has been all great. A farm is a great place to bring up your kids. It's a good place for us to bring up grandkids. I get I get so much pleasure out of walking out behind a pack barn, seeing, 4 little kids from 3 to 10 they've rifled all the drill guns, battery operated drill guns, and they've got pallets put together. And we had the Trump Hotel out, the Trump Mar-a-Lago out behind the pack barn all summer. And it was just great. They're all crawling all through it. Ray had to sleep out there with them one night.
Of course, yeah.
So that kind of stuff is that's the best of it. But I think seeing the grandkids around and playing and being creative with stuff, that really is worth something. The imaginations that kids have when they're outside, that's good. Seeing something actually come out like you hoped it would. Sometimes finding stuff that amazes you that you didn't think was possible. We had 2 rows of watermelons, maybe 350 feet long down there, and the floods came and the cultivating tractors couldn't get in there, and the water's between the plastic, and the grass came up, and the 4-foot pigweeds. And, you couldn't even go down and look at Daniel's meadow. The back end had washed out, and the corn was... Now, we started picking corn. I don't know, Ray called up one day. He said, Daddy, why don't you bring down 4 collapsible bins? And I said, what are you digging? And he says, well, we're going to go through those weeds and get the melons. And 4 bins. I thought, is there any...
A little ambitious.
I said, yeah. I said, is there any melons in there at all? He said, I don't know. I see a couple. We got 100 bushel of melon out of... And they were underwater. I mean, I didn't eat that much watermelon this year, and I should have, but I can't imagine they even survived. That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's like same with the sweet potatoes. They were flooded all the time. Then the deer ate them, and then, it's like, we mowed them off. We cut up the sides with the hillside cultivators. They pulled them up, and we had sweet potatoes. Who'd have thought, I didn't think they'd make it. But so that kind of stuff is really cool, They're getting to be in nature, and, I think everybody enjoys that does this.
Yeah.
There's no real economic. There's easier ways to make money. And if Ann had been a teacher, she'd have been an administrator. She'd have made more, and I could play 2 nights a week at the local DFW, and we'd have been better off financially. But we got all this, and Ray's going to do it, and that's kind of cool. Just stop and think about it. Yeah, just got lucky.
It's as easy as that.
Yeah.
Work hard, get lucky.
Well, we don't, we say that we're masters of our own destiny, and I think there is something to it, but boy, if you don't count luck, either the kind that hits you in a bad way or the stuff that hits you in a good way, if that's not in your business plan, then you really aren't thinking hard enough about your business plan, because I think that's why, that's the thing that says don't put in 75 acres of mixed vegetables with the idea they're going to Black River. Just don't do that. Put in 10. Because if you're really unlucky, you could lose a lot of money big time.
Right. Right. I think that's a show. Thanks for coming on the show and chatting farming with me.
Well, thanks for having me.
I received an email from Pooh after a conversation, and it says, I quote, "It occurs to me that I didn't acknowledge my peers and colleagues as influences and mentors. As I once said, I never had an original idea I couldn't steal from Bob Gray or Jack Mannix." And that was the Farmer's Share. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Pooh of Edgewater Farm. The Farmer's Share is supported by a grant offered by the USDA Specialty Crop Block Program from the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food, and Markets. This funding helps to cover some of my time and travel in order to produce these podcasts for the next 2.5 years. The USDA Agricultural Marketing Service supports projects that address the needs of U.S. specialty crop growers and strengthens local and regional food systems. I have no doubt that this podcast will meet those needs and help educate growers to support the industry. This show also is supported by the Ag Engineering Program of the University of Vermont Extension. If you enjoy this show and want to help support its programming, you can make a one-time or reoccurring donation on our website by visiting thefarmershare.com/support. We also receive funding from the Vermont Vegetable and Berry Growers Association. The VVBGA is a nonprofit organization funded in 1976 to promote the economic, environmental, and social sustainability of vegetable and berry farming in Vermont. Their membership includes over 400 farms across Vermont and beyond, as well as about 50 businesses and organizations that provide products and services of all types to their members. Benefits to members include access to the VVBGA listserv, to buy, sell plants and equipment, share farming information, and tap the vast experience of our growers. Access the community accreditation for produce safety, also known as CAPS. This program is designed for growers, by growers, to help you easily meet market and regulatory food safety expectations. You can access the VVBGA's soil health platform, where you can organize all the soil tests and create and store your soil amendment plans and records. Access to webinars for growers in the VVBGA annual meeting. An email subscription to the Vermont Vegetable and Berry newsletter. Camaraderie, enhanced communication, and fellowship among commercial growers. Memberships are on a per farm, per calendar year basis, and annual dues this year are $80. These funds pay for the organization's operating costs and support educational programs and research projects. These funds also support projects that address grower needs around ag engineering, high tunnel production, pest management, pollinators, produce safety, and soil health. Become a member today to be a part of and further support the veg and berry industry. You can visit thefarmershare.com to listen to previous interviews or see photos, videos, or links discussed from the conversation. If you don't want to miss the next episode, enter your email address on our website and you'll get a note in your inbox when the next one comes out. The Farmer's Share has a YouTube channel with videos from several of the farm visits. We're also on Instagram, and that's where you can be reminded about the latest episode or see photos from the visit. Lastly, if you're enjoying the show, I'd love it if you could write a review. In Apple Podcasts, just click on the show, scroll down to the bottom, and there you can leave 5 stars and a comment to help encourage new listeners to tune in. I'd also encourage you to share this episode with other grower friends or crew who you think would be inspiring for them. Thanks for listening.